So on to the notes for today. Is there anybody that did not get a notes page? Okay, so we have been solving quadratics, and there have been two ways that we have solved quadratics. What are those two ways? What are those two methods?
Zero product.
That's a property. And we used it to solve, yes? Good. What did you just say? Factoring, very good. You were the first one today that has been able to say that without any prompting. Very nice. What's the second one? Oh. Square roots. Very good. Nice job. You guys did great. I haven't done all my other classes. So square roots and factoring. That's all right. I know we talked about it in general. So there are other ways, because factoring is limited only because we can factor only if it factors. We can square root only for ones that are in a square root form. We can use this method that I'm going to teach you always. Okay, and then I'll teach you another method on Monday, always. Okay, so this is a model, so it's one side of your notes. We're going to start with the one side. And then we have an x squared, and then we have 6 x's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 x's. So if we wanted to put some x's some units inside here to make a square, how many would we need to put in there? How many of the little boxes would we need to put in there to make a square?
5.
1, 2, 3 by 3, right? So 3 by 3. That makes a square. So 9 is what we would add to get this square. Okay. If I added anything other than 9, it would not make a square. So we want to look at what the dimensions of this square are. So this here is x, this distance, and this is a 1. So it would be x plus 1, 2, 3. So x plus 3 on this side. What about this side? X plus 3 again. So if we talked about the dimension, the side lengths of the square would be x plus x of each side of the square. So if we were to find the area of that square, it would be x plus 3 times x plus 3, which is the same as x plus 3 squared. Does that make sense? So we have an x plus 3 here and an x plus 3. If we multiply those together, it gives us x plus 3 squared. This is x plus 3 times x plus 3. Does that make sense? So we are going to use that for what we are doing today, for completing the square. So we're going to be using completing the square, and this is the visual here. Why, when we did this, did we take the 6 x's, put 3 of them here, and then 3 here to make a square? Because we couldn't configure it any other way to make a square. What would happen if we did, say, 2 x's here and a 4th x here? It would not be a square, it would be a rectangle. It's going to cut off over here, and then it's going to be longer here, and it would make a rectangle. And these numbers would be different here. So we needed to take the 6 x's, and what do we do with them? Again, because that's going to be important for what we do today. We take the 6 x's and how many of them did I put over here? How many over here? What fractional part is that of the 6? Half. So I took half of them and put it here, and the other half and put it here. So when we go to complete the square, it's always going to be taking whatever that x term is and dividing it by 2. Okay, so what we're going to do to figure out what this number is here, this time when we don't have a picture, is we're going to take our b, divide it by 2, and square it. So where does the b come from? What's this called? Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. What's that called? Standard form. So from the standard form, your b is the coefficient, the number in front of your x or your linear term. So in this case, we have a p, and what's the number in front of the p?
No, 2.
20.
Oh.
Yes, it's a 20. So we're going to take 20, divide it by 2, and square it. What's 20 divided by 2 squared? So you're on the back side of your notes. Turn it around to your back side, and you should be writing down what I'm doing here. So again, I took the 20 divided by 2 to make my square, and then this here, this number that I get is going to be what I end up adding to make that perfect square. What's 20 divided by 2 squared? That's right. So this gives me 10 squared, or 100. So if you can go straight to 100, fantastic. Then you have less to write there. So my 2 answers on this are 100, and now I want to write it as a perfect square. What squared is this equal to? Yes? So remember on the last picture, we had to make a square, so we took half of that 6x, put it here, and then half and put it over here. And then to get this number here, we could take 3 by 3 and square it. So that's where the square comes from. So it's always going to be b over 2 squared, though. It's never going to change. It's always b over 2 squared. So now, how would I write this here as a perfect square? P. This is a plus, so it's going to be a plus. 10 squared. And we get the 10 by either taking 20, dividing it by 2 to get 10, or square root of 100 gives you 10. If I multiplied p plus 10 times p plus 10, what would I get? If you multiply it out, p plus 10 times p plus 10, what do you get?
P squared.
P squared plus 20p plus 100. So we're not going to multiply it out. I'm just showing a quick way here of factoring. So you could do your x if you wanted to, but it's so much faster since we know it's a perfect square if we just take this 20 divided by 2 to get 10, and then write p plus 10 squared. So if I multiply this out, I get back up to here. So we're always looking to get a perfect square. So what do we do on number 2? Again, we want to do our b over 2 squared. What's our b in this one? Negative 22 divided by 2 squared, which is, it's 100 something. 121. So this is 121 here. So that's part of my answer. And then I want to write what it factors to. What does it factor to? I like the 11. What else do I put inside there? Z. This letter is a Z, so it's Z, and then plus 11 or minus 11? Minus. This here is going to tell you what it would be, because if I take Z minus 11 times Z minus 11, it will get me back up to here. Questions on that, because it's going to get harder than this. And I know I'm throwing a lot at you on this part here. You have a question? You're not able to articulate it if you do. Okay. 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 So let's do number 3. So number 3, again, we're going to take our b over 2 squared. So Nate, what's our B?
Our B is
-10. So we're going to take our -10, divide it by 2, and square it. And then what would we get, David, when we take -10 divided by 2 squared?
-5 squared.
-5 squared, which is? 25. So that 25 I'm going to put here, and now I'm going to factor it. This is the same as what squared? Y, and then, good Kira, you got 5. Where did the 5 come from? Square root of 25? Or take 10 divided by 2, the -10 divided by 2. But you have to use this sign of negative here. Go ahead and do the U try. That number 4 doesn't say U try on your paper, but I want you to do number 4 as a U try. And again, there's more steps that I'm adding to this today, so you really want to make sure you understand this correctly.
What is plus or minus?
Wait. That's an apple.
What is it? 17.
I produce. Oh. 289, güey. No, it's 2.
I don't know why,
So this is wait a minute. Yes.
Into his class, freshman year, and he was just, and the other one grabbed the other one behind him. Yeah, no, he grabbed his back.
Is it 289?
I don't know, it was like don't trust me.
Okay, so you should get x plus 17 squared, and then 289 for the blank. On to the next example. Okay, quiet please, you're going to need to listen to this. Okay, so on this one here, we want to solve this equation using completing the square. Again, because some equations won't factor, some we can't use the square root. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that completing the square, and temporarily we're going to ignore the 39. So we're going to look at this expression. What is it that we would add to that to get a perfect square? So we're going to take our b, divide it by 2, and square it. What's our b in this one? -10. So it's -10 divided by 2 squared. Omar, what's that equal to? Yes, you do. You're really good at doing that. Yes, it is. I knew you would. So we're going to add 25 to both sides here. Why not just this left side? Can I just add a number to one side of an equation? No, it would change it. So I have to add it to both sides. Now I'm going to write that as a perfect square. So this would be x, and then what's the number that goes after that to get our square? 5, and then is the 5 positive or negative? Negative. This tells us the sign. So it's a -5. And then it's squared. And now this time we're going to add 39 plus 25. What does that give us? I know what it is. Use your calculator. Get up and get a calculator if you need to. 64. So what would we do now to solve it? Find the square root. So this is just like what we did last class. We took the square root of both sides. And so what would we get on the left side? X minus 5, and then square root of 64 is 8. And then what's my second equation? X minus 5 equals -8. Questions on that? That's from yesterday. So let me just solve it. Where do we get the 5 in there? So if we take 10 and divide it by 2, it gives us 5. So, or the square root of 25. Either way of looking at it. So my answers are 13 and -3. Does it matter what order I write those answers? Could I write -3 and 13? Yes, I can write it whatever order I want. Okay, let's do another one. Again, we're going to take our b, divide it by 2 and square it. What's b in this one? 20. So we're going to take 20 divided by 2 squared, which is 10 squared, which is 100, which is 100. So we're going to add 100 to both sides here. What is -32 plus 100? 68. And then what does this side factor to? What's squared? Questions on where we got the p plus 10? Okay, so questions? So the 10 is when we're factoring this p squared plus 20p plus 100. So an easy way to do that is half of that 20. Or square root of 100. Okay, what next to solve it? Did you have a question? That's okay.
Well, I know how to solve it, but I have
Okay.
a question.
Okay.
It would just be p plus 10 equals 2 square root of 17.
Oh, good. We went way ahead. So p plus 10 here. And then we have to simplify this square root of 68. So this is 2 times 39. 2 times 8. 2 times 30. Is it 39? Did I? No. Sorry. It's not 39. It is 29. Is that right?
39 divided by 2 is 68.
What's 68 divided by 2? 34? I'm sorry. I just drew a brain issue there. And so then this is 2 times 17. And then did you have a question on something?
What's the point of adding
So you have to add the 100 in order to be able to get a perfect square. Because our goal is to get a perfect square here. You can if you want. I just didn't rewrite it there, but it's p squared plus 20p plus 100. Yeah. So then we get on this one 2 times 2 times 17. How does that simplify? Alina, how does that simplify?
It would be 2 and then square root 17.
Yes. So this is not a nice number. Back on the last one, we got a nice number. We got 8, so we could do 8 and -8. So when it's not, we're just going to put a plus and minus there. And then we need to get p by itself. So what do we do to get p by itself? Plus 10 or minus 10? Minus 10. And then we write it in the front. P equals -10 plus or minus 2 square root 17. Okay, what's different on number 7? You guys are doing good. I know I'm throwing a lot at you today. Is that in that same form that they were on 5 and 6? No. What do we need to do to get it to look like that? We want to add 6m. That's right, to both sides. So we get m squared plus 6m equals 40. So what do we want to add to get a perfect square there? Remember, we're going to take our b and we're going to divide it by 2 and square it. So that is 6. This is a b, this is a 6. 6 divided by 2 squared is 9. So we're going to add 9 to this side and add 9 to this side. So what's 40 plus 9? 49. And then we want to factor this, m squared plus 6m plus 9. What does that give us when we factor it? What perfect square does that give us? M plus 3 squared. Questions on how we got that step? This is factoring. M squared plus 6m plus 9 gives us this when we factor it. So we can factor using the x on that, and we'll get the same answer. It's just much easier since we know it's a perfect square to just say, well, we know we're just going to take that 6 and divide it by 2 to get 3. Yes, Omar?
What about a coefficient at the beginning?
What an excellent question. So later on, we're going to do ones that have coefficients. Today, we're going to do simple ones, and it gets more complicated. I love that question. So now what do we do next to solve it? Square root. So we get m plus 3 equals 7, and m plus 3 equals -7. And then I'm just going to write the answers down here. M equals 4 and -10. Okay, I'm not going to have you do the U-try. I'm going to check one on your homework because I think I've been talking enough.